Welcome everybody to our session about sonographic identification of upper limb muscles. In this session we cover the flexors and extensors of the forearm, wrist and fingers, as well as the pro and supinators. We will define where you look for the muscles, how to identify them and at which landmarks you can use them. We start on the upper arm on the side of the flexors, which should not impose any problem on you. We have the biceps brachii with its long and its short head, and deep to it the brachialis muscle. So if you take the probe and place it in transverse view a little bit below or distal to the middle of the upper arm, the thing that you cannot prevent to be directly under your probe is the biceps muscle. The long head is the laterally one, the short head the medially one. And the muscle you find below is the brachialis. If you move up and down a little bit the probe, so this is proximally, this is distally, you can see the muscle belly of the brachialis evolving and getting smaller again. If we continue moving proximally, we however see another muscle appearing, which is this one here. And we can also see that it is pierced by a nerve. This is the coracobrachialis muscle, and this the musculocutaneous nerve. We continue with the extensor compartment, which consists of the triceps brachii. We make our patient sit upright and place the probe in transverse view at about the middle of the height of the dorsal upper arm. Again, nothing can prevent you from finding the triceps right below. What we have here is the lateral head, and we can already see the radial nerve that is here between the lateral head and the brachialis muscle from the flexor compartment. And as we move the probe medially, we also see the medial head and covered by the long head of the triceps. Good. That was quite easy. We are now ready for bigger challenges and go to the forearm. Again, we will start with the flexor compartment. A good place to start is here at the distal point, because things are not that crowded over here and most of us are familiar with this area. So we are here just a little bit proximal to the carpal tunnel. We see the flexor tendons, we see the median nerve, and as we go just a little bit proximally, we see the median nerve doing its U-turn around the muscle. And we see one on top and one deep to the median nerve, and this is how he will continue on the distal forearm, and the one on top is the flexor digitorum superficialis, and the one deep to it is the flexor digitorum profundus. So we already got our first two muscles identified and can use them as landmarks for the median nerve. If we go a little bit more distal again, then we see another muscle coming up, which has a different orientation of its muscle fibers that spans between the radius and the ulna, and this is actually the pronator quadratus muscle, which is a very handy muscle if it comes to anterior interosseous syndrome that has already been present for about 2 months if you want to look for neurogenic atrophy. If we continue from here on proximally, we see another muscle mass evolving right there on top of the radius, which is the flexor pollicis lumbus. We make our model, flex the thumb and let go again, flex and let go. And then we see how this is activated. You can of course always use this to see if you are actually dealing with the right muscle. From here onwards, I suggest moving to another point for sorting out muscles. Take your probe and place it about 5 centimeters distal to the antecubital fossa. So we start at the very medial aspect of the cubital grease. Here we will always have a muscle with a very ovoid shape and a central fascia that helps you in identification, because this is the flexor carpi ulnaris. As we continue laterally, the next muscle we encounter is the flexor digitorum superficialis and the flexor digitorum profundus below. We already saw those two more distally. Next to the flexor digitorum superficialis, you will see a rather small muscle, which is the palmaris longus. You can, if you move down, you see it rapidly evolving into a tendon. Then the next muscle has something like a nose, so you can always identify it by that, because this is now the flexor carpi radialis, and the most lateral of the flexors at this height is actually the pronator teres. You will see if we move proximally that the muscle belly is evolving beautifully, and you can also find the median nerve below here. So we hope that was not too exhaustive for you, but we are moving on rapidly, and we are now continuing with the extensors of the forearm. For looking at the extensors, make your patient pronate the forearm and start with placing your probe also a little bit distal to the antecubital fossa above the brachioradial muscle. So with the probe right on top of the brachioradial muscle, we have the brachioradial muscle right here in our field of view. It has something like a drop-like shape. If you go laterally, you see this. And we already know that it is the guiding structure also for the radial nerve. So if we continue a little bit distally, we see the deep branch of the radial nerve here within this septated muscle, and we already know that this is the supinator. So the supinator is the one that is formed like a U around the radius. If we continue laterally, the next muscles we encounter actually are the extensores carpi radialis. If we continued laterally, the next is the extensor digitorum, and the most lateral one in the proximal aspects here is the anconeus, which we see if we go distally again vanishes here in the proximal aspects of the forearm. Okay, so here we have the supinator, and if we continue a little bit distally, then we first see that up here a small muscle belly is evolving, which is actually the extensor digiti minimi, and also here below we have two deep muscles. Actually this is the abductor pollicis longus, and this is the extensor pollicis longus. So we hope you could orient yourself a little bit, and wish you a lot of fun with practicing at your own lab.